Hey guys, good morning. Okay, let's look at our new story that we're going to be reading for the next 2 weeks, or our new stories, because there's going to be 2 of them. But our new stories are going to be nonfiction stories, and we'll go back over and make sure you remember what a nonfiction story is. And both of these stories are going to be about animals and their offspring. So we're going to talk about that this week too. Alright, so the first story we're going to be looking at is in our reading book, and it's called Baby Bears. It will be in that big reading book that you've got. And then I'm going to be reading you a story called Animal Babies, and it's just a book that I have that we will read together. But we'll be talking about both of these stories this week, and we'll take a test on them at the end of the 2 weeks, because these stories usually take about 2 weeks for us to learn all of the things that we need to learn about. Alright, so let's remember both of these stories are nonfiction. So let's go back over and see if we can remember what nonfiction is. So what is nonfiction? If you remember, nonfiction means that they are true stories. They're about real things. They're not made up. And nonfiction stories usually just tell you facts, or facts are just true things about something. So of course our story called Bear Cubs, what do you think, or Baby Bear, what do you think they're going to be about? Exactly, it's going to be about baby bears. And the story called Animal Babies, what do you think it's going to be about? Yeah, it's going to talk about different animal babies, because nonfiction, remember, is just true stories. They're going to have real photographs in them, and they're going to have a lot of those text features that we talked about before we went out for fall break. We talked about text features. So we're going to talk about those in the next 2 weeks too. But so what do we know about animals? Did you know that there are 5 kinds of animals? Did you guys know that? Good. One of them is mammals. Those are some kinds of animals. Mammals are the kind of animals that have fur, and they feed their babies milk. They usually will take care of their babies, and they breathe with lungs. Those are just some of the things about mammals. Can you think of some animals that would be mammals? Okay, good. Pretty much any animal that has fur is going to be a mammal. But there are some animals that even don't have fur that are mammals. Did you know that whales and dolphins are also mammals? Even though they live in the ocean, in the water, they are mammals. They feed their babies milk. They have lungs. That's what makes them a mammal. All right, another kind of animal is birds. And you guys know that birds are the ones that have the feathers. They have wings and beaks. They lay eggs. And they also breathe with lungs. So I bet you could think of some animals that are birds. Yeah. And then reptiles are another kind of animal. Asher has shown us a few of his animals that he has. And he has animals that are reptiles. Reptiles have scales on their body. It's like those kind of hard little bitty plates that cover their whole body. It's not really soft like skin. It's kind of smooth and hard. So reptiles have scales instead of fur or feathers. They also lay eggs, but their eggs are usually kind of soft. They're not hard like bird eggs. The outside of the egg would be kind of soft. They do not usually take care of their babies. Mammals and birds, when they have babies, they will stick around and take care of the baby, but reptiles don't. Some reptiles are like Asher's turtle and Asher's snake. Those are reptiles. So whenever they lay the eggs, they leave. And then the babies, when they hatch, can take care of themselves. They don't need mom and dad, so they don't take care of their young. Reptiles don't. And then fish. Fish also have scales. I bet you know some other things about fish. They have fins instead of arms or legs. They live in the water, of course, so they breathe with gills. It's something a little different than lungs. All of these animals have lungs that they breathe with. And your lungs are in your chest. It's what... It's when you breathe in, you can feel those lungs fill up with air if you have your hand on your chest. So our lungs are in our chest, but fish have something called gills that are on the sides of their neck that help them breathe. And that's because they live under the water and there's no air to breathe in under the water. The gills are special and they can get the air out of the water because there's a little bit in the water and they can get it out. Regular lungs can't do that, but gills can. They're special. All right, and then the last kind of animal is amphibians. And amphibians are kind of a mix of the reptiles and the fish, because amphibians start out living in the water like fish, but then they change, and kind of when they grow up, they turn into animals that live on the land like reptiles. Amphibians have skin on their body just like we have skin. Amphibians will have skin, and they're animals like frogs or toads or newts or salamanders. Those are all amphibians, and they start out like tadpoles. You know, a frog looks like a tadpole when it's a baby, isn't it? Yeah, all amphibians kind of look like that when they're young, when they're babies. But then they change and turn into the animal that they're going to look like. So an amphibian is an animal that kind of changes. It's kind of like a fish when it's little, but then when it grows up, it acts more like a reptile. So, okay, those are just a few of the different animals and a few little things about them. As we talked about all of these animals, you could tell that they are very different. They have different things on the outside of their body. They might have different kinds of babies, like eggs or real babies. They might eat different things. Of course, they live in different places. But there are lots of things that are also the same about animals, all animals. And one thing is the same about them is they have something called offspring. Do you know what an offspring is? All right, an offspring is a baby or a young, like a child kind of. That's all an offspring is. All animals have offspring, don't they? Yes, yes. And both of our stories this week will be about offspring. Baby bears and baby animals, of course, offspring are babies, so they're all going to be about the animal babies or the offspring of these animals. And like I talked about, all animals are going to have offspring. They may just have them different ways. Some animals have live babies, which means they don't lay eggs. The baby is just alive when it gets born. Or there's some animals that have eggs and then the baby comes out of the egg. So, but they're still all offspring. So let's go ahead and look at our story this week. I'm going to read you Baby Bears. So Baby Bears is by Bobby Kalman. And we're going to read and find out some things about baby bears. I bet while we're reading, you're going to hear some things that you already knew. But I bet you're also going to find out some things that you did not know about baby bears. So be ready. In just a few minutes, we're going to talk about our vocabulary words too. I want to ask you in the vocabulary lesson some things that you learned about baby bears. So be ready to maybe tell me some things that you learned about baby bears while we were reading this story. I want to ask you before we look at the vocabulary words. All right, so Baby Bears by Bobby Kalman. What is a bear? Bears are animals called mammals. Mammals have hair or fur on their bodies. Bears are covered with fur. Mammals are born. You were born too. You are a mammal. Did you guys know that we are animals? Yeah, we are a kind of animal. We're a mammal just like a bear. And I know you're like, wait a minute, we don't have fur or hair all over our body, but yeah, we do. We feed our babies milk, we have lungs. We are mammals just like a bear. So we are animals too. All right. Baby bears are called cubs. Cubs are born with their eyes shut. Their eyes open when they are about 6 weeks old. This brown bear cub was just born. It has very little fur. Mammal mothers make milk inside their bodies. Mammal babies nurse from their mothers. To nurse is to drink mother's milk. The polar bear cub is nursing. Kinds of bears. There are 8 kinds of bears. The bears shown on this page are an American black bear, a brown bear, and a polar bear. These bears all live in North America. and North America is where we live. So we have these kind of animals in the same kind of place that we live. I know we don't have polar bears where we live, but if you go a little bit north to where it's cold all the time, we do have polar bears. So American black bears can be different colors. What color is this black bear? Well, he even has some white on him, doesn't he? There are different kinds of brown bears. These grizzly bears are one kind of brown bear. Polar bears have white fur. They live in a cold place called the Arctic. People who study bears once thought that giant panda bears were raccoons. Now people think that these animals are bears. There are not many giant pandas left in the world. Giant pandas live in China. Bear bodies. Bears have 4 legs. They can walk on all 4 legs or on their 2 back legs. They have 5 toes with claws on each foot. Claws are curved nails. This grizzly bear cub has brown fur covering its body. Bears can smell, hear, and see very well. Bears use their claws to climb and dig. Bear coats. Bears have 2 kinds of fur. Some of their fur is short and some is long. Their short fur keeps them warm. Their long fur keeps water away from their skin. Polar bears have thick white fur. Pandas have black and white fur. And in case you didn't know, I bet you knew that a coat was animal fur, wasn't it? It's not like they're wearing a coat like you wear, but an animal's coat is their fur. Bear families. A bear family is made up of a mother bear and her cubs. Most mother bears have litters of cubs. A litter is 2 or more babies that are born at the same time. This mother grizzly has 3 cubs. Cubs stay with their mothers until they are 2 to 3 years old. They watch their mothers to learn how to live on their own. Mother bears teach their cubs where to find food and how to stay safe. This mother bear is teaching her cubs how to climb a tree. Mothers also teach cubs how to groom their fur and stay clean. What do bears eat? Most bears are omnivores. Omnivores are animals that eat both plants and animals. We are omnivores too, because we eat plants and animals. Bears eat honey, berries, leaves, and eggs. They also eat insects, fish, and other animals. Polar bears are carnivores. Carnivores eat mainly other animals. Pandas are herbivores. Herbivores eat mainly plants. Pandas eat plants called bamboo. Bear habitats. Bears live in different places. The natural place where a bear lives is called its habitat. Many bears live in forests. Forests are habitats with many trees. Some bears live on mountains. Pandas live in forests that grow high on mountains. And bamboo grows in these forests. Black bears live in North American forests. And black bears are the kind of bears that we have around here. We don't have pandas or polar bears or even brown bears. We have the black bears. Winter sleep. Some bears live in places that have cold winters. It is hard for the bears to find food when it's cold. To stay alive, they sleep through most of the winter. During the summer and fall, the bears eat a lot of food. They store the food as fat on their bodies. The bears live off the fat during the winter. Do you know what that's called when the bears go to sleep all winter? Yeah, hibernating. Good. These grizzly bears are eating a lot of salmon. They are getting ready for winter. Salmon is a kind of fish. Mother bears that live in cold places have their cubs in winter. Before the cubs are born, the mother builds a home called a den. The den is warm and safe place for the bears to live. Many bears make their dens by digging holes in hills or under tree roots. Some bears use caves or holes in logs for their dens. After the cubs are born, the mother goes to sleep. The cubs nurse while their mother sleeps. Some polar bears make tunnels in the snow to use as dens. Cubs grow up. Each bear goes through a set of changes called a life cycle. A life cycle starts when a cub is born. The cub grows and changes. It then becomes an adult bear. These pictures show the life cycle of an American black bear. Adult bears can make babies. A black bear cub drinks its mother's milk. Soon the cub leaves the den. It still nurses, but it starts eating other foods too. The cub becomes an adult when it's 3 to 5 years old. And then, of course, it starts all over again when the bear is an adult. Then it will have babies, and the babies will start to grow up. They'll start to eat other foods and that, and then they'll be grown, and they'll just keep going and going. That's a life cycle. A cycle is like a circle. This mother bear and her cubs are looking for food in a forest. The cubs will soon start living on their own and finding food for themselves. This black bear cub has just left its den. It is starting to learn about the world. The cub will quickly find out why it should not play with skunks. Yeah, but you guys know why you shouldn't play with skunks. And that is the end of our story. It just tells us a little bit about the author. So did you guys hear some new things about bears that you didn't know? I did too. So be ready here in just a few minutes when our vocabulary lesson starts. And you can tell me some of those new things maybe you learned about bears. And remember, the vocabulary words are going to be these yellow highlighted words. So we're going to talk about those in just a minute in a live lesson. And we'll go over and make sure that you know what all of those vocabulary words mean, okay? All right, I'll see you all in a minute.